The county assessor stood in front of what used to be barn number 3 and stared at the chickens. 300 of them, scratching through what had been fallow ground last month, moving in organized ways across the field behind temporary fencing. "Miss Okafor," he said slowly, "where's your tractor?" Nessa Okafor, 26 years old, stood with her arms crossed over her canvas jacket. Behind her, the chickens kept working, scratching, pecking, fertilizing. "Sold it," she said. He blinked. "You sold your tractor?" "Yes, sir. May 19th. Got $4,200 for a 1979 Ford 5000 with a bad transmission and rust issues. And bought chickens. 300 layers. And mobile fencing. And a small processing setup." The assessor looked at his clipboard, then at the chickens, then at Nessa. "Miss Okafor, this is a 70-acre farm. You can't work 70 acres without a tractor." Nessa said nothing. Her grandfather's words, written in the margins of his accounting ledger. If everyone tells you the same thing, check whether they all learned it from the same place. 3 months earlier, March 8, 2024, the attorney's office in Yamhill County, Oregon, smelled like old paper and coffee that had been sitting too long. Nessa sat in a chair with wooden arms worn smooth, listening to Mr. Pearson read through Exhibit A, Section 3, Paragraph 2 of her grandfather's will. The property located at 14750 Meadowlark Road, comprising 70 acres, structures, and equipment, passes to Vanessa Marie Okafor, sole heir, free of liens and encumbrances. He paused. With the exception of approximately $18,000 in outstanding property taxes, equipment loans, and deferred maintenance costs. Nessa had known the number would be bad. $18,000 still hit like a fist. The estate contains $3,200 in liquid assets, Mr. Pearson continued. Farm equipment is detailed in Appendix C. You'll need to review the full inventory, but the primary asset is a Ford 5000 tractor, circa 1979, operational but needs work. After the meeting, Nessa drove out to the property in her 2006 Subaru that had 198,000 miles on it. The farm sat 15 minutes outside McMinnville, tucked into rolling hills that had grown hazelnuts for 3 generations. Her grandfather had switched to wheat and hay after the hazelnut market collapsed in the 90s, then barely scraped by until the stroke took him in January. The fields were empty now, 70 acres of dormant grass and bare soil. The tractor sat near the main barn, blue paint faded to gray, front tire soft. The house was small, built in 1952, with a kitchen that still had the original yellow countertops. Nessa walked the property line as the sun dropped. It took her 2 hours and 17 minutes. The fences were falling. The barn roofs were patched with mismatched metal. The irrigation system was half broken. But the land itself, the land was good. Black soil, decent drainage, southern exposure. Her grandfather had loved it enough to die broke, trying to keep it. That night, she slept in the house for the first time. The heat didn't work well, and she used 3 blankets. She'd brought 1 box from her apartment in Portland, clothes, her laptop, and a locked metal file box her grandfather had left with Mr. Pearson with specific instructions, not to be opened until she spent 1 night on the land. The combination was her grandmother's birth month and day, 0724. Inside, a stack of accounting ledgers going back to 1983, bundled with twine. A hand-drawn map of the property with notes in her grandfather's tight handwriting. And a letter on lined notebook paper. "Nessa, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're probably angry I left you this mess. I'm sorry. I should have sold years ago, but I loved this place too much and understood it too little. The ledgers tell the truth I wouldn't face. Farming the old way, the way everyone does it, doesn't work at this scale anymore. Not without money we don't have. The equipment costs more to maintain. And it produces. The crops barely cover the inputs. I work myself to exhaustion every year and still lost ground. But there's another way. I found it too late, spent too long set in my thinking. Your grandmother tried to tell me. Look at Ledger 4, pages 31 to 47. Those were the only profitable years we had. Study why. And read the book I marked. It's on the shelf in the kitchen, blue spine. Author's name is Saladin. Don't do what I did. Don't try to farm like a big operation when you're small. Farm like you're small on purpose. Make it work for you, not against you. The land is good. You're smart. I believe in you even though I never said it enough. Grandpa James Nessa sat at the kitchen table until past midnight, reading Ledger 4. The pages were brittle, the ink faded, but the numbers were clear. 1991 to 1993, her grandmother had kept chickens. 300 birds. Free-range layers, moved around the property in a rotation system Nessa didn't fully understand from the brief notes. Eggs sold at farmers' markets, restaurants, direct to customers. The profit margins were small per dozen, but the volume added up. And the chickens had done something else: fertilized the fields, controlled pests, reduced the need for inputs. The hay crops those years had been the best on record. Then, in 1994, her grandmother died. The chickens were sold. Her grandfather went back to conventional grain farming. The profitable years ended. Nessa found the book, Pastured Poultry Profits by Joel Salatin. Spine cracked from rereading, pages marked with her grandmother's neat pencil annotations. She read until dawn. By March 15th, Nessa had a plan. She listed the tractor on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and Tractor House. She called the extension office and asked 10,000 questions about poultry licensing, mobile infrastructure, and pasture rotation. She drove to 3 farms that were already doing rotational grazing and asked to see their operations. Most farmers looked at her like she was naive. A woman in her 20s with no experience, planning to make a living with chickens on 70 acres? But one farmer, Linda Sorensen, 58, running a 60-acre grass-fed beef and poultry operation, spent 4 hours walking Nessa through the system. The chickens follow the cattle, Linda explained, pointing to mobile coops on wheels. The cattle graze, the chickens come behind and scratch through the manure, eat the fly larvae, spread the fertilizer, add their own nitrogen. Then both move, and the land rests. 60-day rotation cycle. The land gets healthier every year, and we're producing 2 income streams from the same acres. Does it work without cattle? Nessa asked. Linda tilted her head, thinking. It would work. Different management, but yeah. Chickens alone can definitely improve land. Your margins would be on the eggs mostly. Maybe meat birds as a second cycle. Everyone says I need a tractor. Everyone says a lot of things. Linda smiled. I sold my tractor 6 years ago. Haven't missed it once. The tractor sold on May 19th to a hobby farmer from Newburgh who paid $4,200 cash and hauled it away on a flatbed. Nessa watched it go with something between relief and terror. That money, combined with what remained from the estate and a microloan from a farm credit program, gave her $8,000. She spent it in 10 days. 300-layer pullets from a hatchery in Canby, $1,800. The birds were 16 weeks old, just about to start laying. Mixed heritage breeds, Rhode Island Reds, Barred Rocks, Australorps. The hatchery owner, a man named Dale who looked like he'd been raising chickens since the Depression, loaded them into transport crates himself. You know what you're doing? He asked. Learning, Nessa said. That's an honest answer. Most folks lie. He handed her a business card. You have questions, you call me. I'd rather help you succeed than sell you more birds when these die. Mobile electric fencing and a solar charger, $900. 4 mobile chicken coops on wheels, used but solid, from a farm going out of business, $1,200. Feeders, waterers, basic processing equipment for on-farm egg cleaning and packing, $800. Licensing, permits, inspection fees, $600. The rest went to feed, bedding, and supplies. By June 1st, 300 chickens were living on Nessa's land in a mobile setup that could be moved every 3 days. And the neighbors came to watch. The property to the north was owned by Rick and Susan Mallory, 200 acres of grass seed, operated with 2 tractors and a combine. Rick stopped by the second day, leaned against his truck. Nessa, right? Your grandfather was James Okafor. Yes, sir. Good man. Worked hard. Rick looked at the chickens scratching through the grass. You're doing poultry now? Rotational layers. Pasture-based. Huh. He didn't sound impressed. That's not really farming though, is it? That's more like hobby agriculture. Nessa kept adjusting the fence line. It's farming if it pays the bills. Does it pay the bills? She didn't answer because she didn't know yet. The chickens hadn't started laying. Rick's expression softened slightly. Look, I don't mean to be harsh, but running a real farm takes equipment. Tractors, implements, infrastructure. You can't scale chickens. Maybe I don't need to scale. He shook his head, climbed back in his truck. Good luck. You'll need it. The chickens started laying on June 8th. Nessa collected 43 eggs the first day, 61 the second, 97 the third. By June 15th, she was averaging 200 eggs daily. She'd already lined up buyers, 2 restaurants in McMinnville that committed to taking 10 dozen a week each, and a slot at the Saturday farmers market. Prices were set at $6 per dozen for standard browns, $7 for the specialty colors, $8 for the medium-sized pullet eggs that chefs loved. The farmers market was her testing ground. She showed up at 7 a.m. on June 22nd with 18 dozen eggs in mismatched cartons, a hand-lettered sign, and no idea what she was doing. Her booth was between a lavender farm and a woman selling goat cheese. The goat cheese woman, Sarah, maybe 40, with gray streaks in her braid, looked at Nessa's setup and smiled. "First time? That obvious? You look terrified." "Don't be. People here appreciate the real thing. You're pasture-raised, fully, moved every 3 days." "Then say that. Tell the story. People buy the story as much as the eggs." By noon, Nessa had sold 16 dozen. By 2 p.m., when the market closed, she was sold out completely. She talked to 67 people, answered questions about breeds and feed and why the yolks were so orange, and collected $206. She sat in her car afterward and cried, big, shaking sobs that came from somewhere deeper than relief. But selling eggs wasn't enough. The math was tight. She ran the numbers every night on the kitchen table. 200 eggs per day average, call it 1,400. Per week. 60% to restaurants at wholesale, $5 per dozen. 40% to farmers market at retail, $6 to $8 per dozen. Weekly gross revenue, maybe $600. Monthly, $2,400. Property taxes, loan payments, feed costs, insurance, vehicle maintenance, living expenses, it all ate the margins down to nearly nothing. She needed another revenue stream. Her grandfather's ledger had mentioned meat birds, broilers raised separate from layers. 6-week grow-out, higher margin per bird, sold as whole chickens or parts. She called Linda Sorensen. "You'd need separate coops, separate management," Linda said. "But yeah, you could run batches between your layer rotations. Use the same pasture system. I do 5 batches a year, 50 birds per batch. Sell them for $25 each, processed. That's over $6,000 in additional revenue, and the birds improve the land just like layers do. Would you teach me to process them? Come up next week. I'll show you everything." Nessa ordered 50 broiler chicks. They arrived July 10th, peeping in a cardboard box, impossibly fragile. She set them up in a brooder in barn number 2, kept them warm, fed them starter feed, watched them grow at a rate that seemed impossible. By July 24th, they were feathered out and moving to pasture. By August 15th, they were ready for processing. Linda walked Nessa through the process. Humane dispatch, scalding, plucking, evisceration. It was hard work, physically and emotionally. But it was honest, and it was necessary, and Nessa did it with her grandmother's care and her grandfather's determination. She sold 47 chickens that month at $22 each, over $1,000 in revenue from 6 weeks of work. The county assessor came back in September, saw the whole operation running. Layers in one section, meat birds in another, both rotating across the property in planned patterns. Eggs going out to restaurants and markets, processed chickens sold direct to customers, the grass looking healthier than it had in years. "You're really making this work?" he asked. "The numbers say yes." He looked at his assessment paperwork, then at Nessa. "Your property taxes are still due. $6,000 by November 1st. "I know. Can you pay them?" She didn't answer immediately. The math was close, terrifyingly close. But it was possible. "I'll pay them," she said. After he left, Rick Mallory pulled up. Same truck, different expression. "I've been watching," he said. "You're running those birds better than I expected. How's the income looking?" Nessa almost didn't answer. Then she remembered her grandfather's words. "Don't do what I did." "It's working," she said. "I'm not rich, but I'm not losing money. The land's improving. The operation's sustainable." Rick nodded slowly. "I heard you're selling chickens at $22 each." "Yes, sir. My wife wants to buy 2 for Thanksgiving. Said your eggs are the best she's had. Figures the chickens are probably good too." Nessa smiled, small, tired, real. "I'll put you down for 2. The first frost came October 12th, earlier than expected, hard enough to silver the grass and remind Nessa that winter was coming. She walked the property at dawn, watching the chickens, Now 340 layers after replacing some older birds, scratching through frost-touched pasture. They didn't seem to mind the cold. Her phone buzzed. A text from Chef Morgan at Thistle Restaurant. Can you do 20 dozen this week instead of 10? Another restaurant fell through on their supplier. Long-term increase if you can handle it. Nessa did the math in her head. 20 dozen weekly to Thistle alone, plus her other restaurant accounts, plus the farmer's market, plus the direct customers who'd started driving out to the farm after finding her through word of mouth. She was at capacity. No, she was over capacity. She texted back, yes, I can do 20. That afternoon, she ordered another 100 pullets. The second batch of meat birds, 75 this time, went to processing in late October. Nessa had gotten faster, more efficient, less emotionally raw about the work. She'd hired help too. A high school kid named Marcus who lived down the road, strong and quiet, willing to learn. She paid him $15 an hour and taught him everything Linda had taught her. Why chickens? Marcus asked one day while they were moving coops. Why not something bigger? My uncle runs cattle. Cattle need land I don't have and equipment I can't afford, Nessa said. Chickens fit the scale I'm working at. They improve the land fast. The return on investment is quick, and people want what I'm producing. But everyone says real farming is tractors and big equipment. Everyone says a lot of things. She smiled. My grandfather spent 40 years listening to everyone. Died broke. I'm trying something different. By November 1st, Nessa had $6,200 in the bank. She paid the property taxes in full, $6,000, delivered by check to the county office. The clerk stamped the receipt and handed it across the counter. Your grandfather used to be late on these, she said quietly. Every year, scrambling. You're paid early. Yes, ma'am. What changed? Nessa thought about that. The approach. The scale. The willingness to do something different. She walked out into autumn sunshine and breathed deep. But the real test came 3 weeks later. Rick Mallory stopped by on November 18th. His truck was dusty, and he looked tired in a way that wasn't just physical. Nessa, you got a minute? They sat on the porch of the old house. Rick stared at his hands. I'm thinking about selling, he said finally. The operation, I mean. The equipment costs are killing me. The fuel, the maintenance, the property taxes on 200 acres. I'm working 80 hours a week and barely breaking even. My son doesn't want the farm. Susan's tired. I'm tired. Nessa didn't know what to say. I've been watching what you're doing, Rick continued. You're working maybe 50 hours a week, right? And you're paying your bills. Your land looks better than mine. I can see it from my north field. The grass is thicker. You're not pouring money into diesel and equipment repairs. I'm working at a different scale, Nessa said carefully. That's what I'm starting to understand. I've been farming the way my father did. Big equipment, big inputs, big debt. Economies of scale, they said. But it only works if you keep getting bigger, and I can't get bigger. He looked at her. Could your system scale up? If someone had more land? Yes, Nessa said. Not by just adding more of the same. You'd need diversity. Layers, meat birds, maybe rotational grazing with sheep or cattle. Multiple income streams, all improving the same land. It's more management intensive, but less capital intensive. Would you teach me? That question sat between them like something fragile. Yes, Nessa said. They started meeting twice a week. Nessa walked Rick through the rotation systems, the costing models, the customer relationships. She showed him her ledgers, her grandmother's profitable years, her own growing numbers. She introduced him to Linda Sorensen and the other regenerative farmers she'd learned from. Rick didn't switch overnight, but he sold 1 tractor, bought 200 chickens, started testing. By spring, 3 other farms in the area had reached out to Nessa for consulting. She charged $200 for a half-day session. Some wanted to add poultry to existing operations. Some wanted to transition completely. All of them were tired of the conventional approach that demanded more equipment, more debt, more scale. On March 8, 2025, exactly 1 year after the attorney's office, after the inheritance, after the letter, Nessa sat at her kitchen table and reviewed the year's accounting. Total revenue, $48,000. Total expenses, $29,000. Net profit, $19,000. Not a fortune, but honest, sustainable, and growing. Her land was healthier than it had been in decades. Her customer base was expanding. She was sleeping at night. She opened her grandfather's ledger to the last page and wrote carefully. Year 1. Profitable. 340 layers, 275 meat birds, 5 batches. Land quality improving measurably. Consulting income beginning. No debt. System sustainable. Grandpa, I think you'd be proud. I know Grandma would be. The neighbors laughed when I sold the tractor. They don't laugh anymore. Some are asking questions. Some are changing. And I'm learning that the best revenge against doubt isn't proving people wrong. It's building something that works so well they want to join you. Next year, expand to 500 layers, add sheep, build a proper farm store. The land can handle it. So can I. She closed the ledger, walked outside. The spring air smelled like wet earth and growing things. 340 chickens were scattered across green pasture, scratching and pecking and doing the work they were made for. Nessa smiled, went to move the coops, and got back to farming.